Hey everyone, welcome back and welcome in. If you're new, my name is Kay and today's Swatch Sesh features Zombie Claw's You're Going to Love Me collection, which they sent over to me as PR.
Thank you.
And Zombie Claw is also the sponsor of today's video. Now, about this collection, as you can imagine with that type of name, it is definitely geared and oriented towards Valentine's Day. Now, Zombie Claw didn't do this alone. They actually got some help from Andrea, which some of you may know as Polish or Parish. So Andrea helped with choosing the colors, choosing the names with the mood board. So this was definitely like a collaborative effort, which is always really cool to see. So let's go ahead and get into the sesh. Let's swatch them, let's talk about them, and then I'll be back to talk some more, but also to share some details about the drop.
Raging Inside Me. We're kicking off the sesh with Raging Inside Me, which is the only green in this 6-piece set. By the way, this collection was inspired by the works of author Caryn Hart. I only learned that after I recorded my intro, so apologies for not having mentioned that earlier. What we have here is a very blackened base that the brand describes as a blackened violet. However, are you gonna see those violet tones? Not really, but what you can see are those green shimmers that have a forest green tone, and they do shift into blues. Let's allow those stunning blue hues to shine under indirect lighting and at deep angles. Zombie Claw tends to do these shimmers really well, so I think the green lovers are in really good hands here. Forever has been built on less. Next up is a completely different look, mood, and formula. We're getting a little cozy vibe with this one, which starts off with a gray base and some flaky seasoning, specifically copper and gold flakes that I find are pretty nicely sized. They're not too big, but there's plenty of them in there, and they do pop nicely because they contrast so well against the gray. So TLDL, you won't be flaky starved. Now, for anyone who's curious, these flakies did not shift for me, so just a heads up here that this is how the polish will look and remain under any lighting. Look at Me. We are turning our heads and focusing on the most vibrant and bold color in this collection, appropriately named Look at Me, which has a raspberry colored base as a foundation with a generous offering of gold shimmer. Now, while I can definitely see the raspberry base in my initial application, I noticed that it ends up looking close to somewhat of a tomato red color once it's fully applied, and that could be due to the shimmer. I also found that this one has a pearlescent effect that likes to put those brush strokes on display, so you might have to be a little bit more mindful during application if you care about how that will affect the look. I noticed those gold shimmers have a slight shift into somewhat of a reddish color. They seem to blend in with that raspberry base under specific lighting conditions, but by default, this is just a very striking color that is definitely gonna make a statement on your nails. Playing with Fire. Moving on to what I'd say is the purple-ish shade of this collection, and I'm sure you noticed that sultry burgundy base with my first swipe there. Building on that, we have somewhat of a blurple-ish shimmer that does have a nice shift to it, which I'll show off soon. Check out how this second coat really helped to bring out the depth in that burgundy base, which in turn is supporting the pop factor of those shimmers. Now, you know indirect lighting is going to create a whole different effect. Look at that pretty magenta color that appears in this clip. That's what you'll see under lower lighting condition. It looks like a completely different polish. The shimmers here are just eager to show off their shift, so it's not really going to be hard for you to catch a glimpse of those pinky tones. Mutual Obsession. Next up is Mutual Obsession. Now, I do have to point out that even though those elements look like flakies, they're actually large particle shimmers, and they're living their best life in that coffee or just brown colored base that, by the way, does have some noticeable translucency to it. I really like how those shimmers scatter across the nail so evenly and so abundantly. The effect is pretty cool. Also, they do shift. Take a look at how the green colors start to invade the nail and take the place of those golden tones at extreme angles. Really nice, right? And even though I'm not quite into this color combo, I have to admit that those large particle shimmers are an interesting touch. Deal, Angel. And now we get to this peculiar little twist, a white option, which honestly felt very fitting when I initially saw the collection. So let's break it down. We have a porcelain white color with pearlescent white shimmer, and I have yet to come across a one-coater pearlescent polish. So I'm mindfully and carefully applying a second coat here. As I do that, you can already start to see that shimmer and how it settles on the nail. I do appreciate the touch because without it, I feel like we would have gotten a much less interesting version. And as I look at this clip, I can't help but be reminded of Look At Me. This does feel and look like they're similar formulas because they do give off a very similar end result, apart from the color, of course. And that was the Sesh. So we have 6 polishes inspired by the works of author Caryn Hart. And overall, I will say that it seems Zombie Claw is going towards the direction of more simpler looks and finishes overall, but you could argue that there are 2 polishes that have flakies in them. However, they are in a brown colored base, which really tones things down. Also, me as a person who is not familiar with the works of the author, I can't really speak on how the collection translates her books and the stuff that she does, but I can say that if we're going to talk about Valentine's Day vibes, the browns and the greens could throw one off just a little bit. And I only say that because I'm not used to seeing browns and green tones for Valentine's Day, but you could always go seasonally inappropriate, and you know I'm going to applaud that. So there's that. Now, this collection is going to drop on February 20th. It's going to go for $70 USD. You can always get the individual shades though, which are going to be $13 each. And if you only had money to buy one polish, I would go with Raging Inside Me, which is the blue-green one. If you had money for 2, I would add in Playing with Fire, which is the kind of like purpley blue one. And if you had money to add one more, I would go with Look At Me. So that is going to wrap up today's sesh. Thank you so much for hanging out and watching me swatch the You're Gonna Love Me collection. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching so much. Thank you for watching my video. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you.